Traceability is at the very center of what makes an extraordinary blockchain solution, and the impact of it is huge across industry and sectors. So in this next panel, we will explore exactly the traceability solutions, a discussion on how we can use, apply, and employ them all across the board. Traceability leads to significantly higher quality products and ensures safety, transparency, and absolute clarity in governance. So let's learn how blockchain enhances traceability across sectors, from agriculture to forensics, across the third sector, charitable giving as well, of course, by revolutionizing supply chains, provenance tracking, and more. Here to lead the discussion, please give a huge Cardano summit to, from the Cardano Foundation, Thomas Mayfield.
Well, good morning and welcome. Not only to Dubai, but obviously to the Cardano Summit 2023. It's an absolute honor for me to be here today on stage, presenting or moderating with this fantastic panel of professionals and with exceptional expertise in a number of industries. But before I ask the panel to introduce themselves, I just want to give an overview or highlight what it is we're going to be speaking about today. I know David has already mentioned, but I think I just want to capture a couple of points. So blockchain technology is a powerful instrument that provides utility to a number of aspects within business and industry. But the things we're going to talk about today is traceability and transparency. And this is a use case that I believe, and I think it's been demonstrated numerous times, that blockchain is ideally purpose-fit for. So without further ado, I'd like to ask or invite the panelists to introduce themselves. Tell us a little bit about yourselves, your industry, your current organization, and sort of the goals and focus of your company or organization. So without further ado, Captain Mohammed, if you could please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mohammed Al-Shamsi, and I'm the head of firearms and toolmarks at Dubai Police. The head of the firearms and toolmarks is a discipline in forensic science. And what we generally do is identify whether this bullet came out of this specific firearm or not, and similarly in tools. And the way we do it is we literally shoot a firearm inside a water tank and get that bullet or cartridge case and look at it under a comparison microscope, which allows you to look at two different things simultaneously. And it's interesting because if those have the same ballistics fingerprint, then those came out of the same source, and if not, it's not. And we had different achievements, internationally speaking. I was fortunate to be the first forensics expert that managed to get certified outside of North America in all certifications in firearms and toolmarks. I was the first ammunition experts from a law enforcement background as part of the United Nations Safeguard Program. We've managed to solve over 1,500 cases, local, national, international. So did my fair share of things.
That's excellent. Thank you, Captain. Jean-Pierre?
Yes, good afternoon, good morning. I think we're coming from all around the world, so I'm Jean-Pierre Lavelle, and I'm the CEO and founder of AgriLedger. And kind of what Captain Mohammed was talking about is part of the reason we looked at it, which was the chain of custody, and the chain of custody of food, and how do we actually look to get closer to market for the farmer in owning that, and understanding that everybody else in between is actually a service provider. So our claim to fame was putting mangoes on the blockchain, and we were able to demonstrate that a farmer in the middle of nowhere in Haiti could actually get his mangoes to the US and they went from about 90 cents for the dozen to nearly 750. So that was a 750% increase without telling anybody the difference. But it was about rationalizing who should be touching, who should be part, and also making sure that those people are able to actually participate. So for me, this was really coming in from a finance background. Like when you're moving the money, you need to know who's touching it. And if it doesn't get touched by the right person, then there's a problem. And it's also not about track and trace only of the goods. It's the track and trace of the good, what happens to them, who does what, does it meet the requirements, and finally, the most important thing is track and trace the money back to everybody so everyone gets paid at the same time, a fair amount.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Genevieve. Bahrain.
Yep, so I'm Behrang Ravari, the co-founder and co-CEO of Scientific Analytical Tools, established in 2004 here in Dubai. And we have the privilege and honor to serve law enforcement within the region with forensic tools, equipment, services. And yeah, we are exploring different angle usages of blockchain and empowering our industry with blockchain technologies. So 2-3 years ago, we had the chance and the opportunity to work with the Cardano Foundation in Georgia, with the government of Georgia on the wine project, Traceability. So that's where we started our journey with the Cardano and the foundation. And yep, here we are.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And last but not least, Alexis, please.
Thank you. Well, it's so great to be here, getting to know the Cardano Foundation. I'm Alexis Pappas, and I'm the Chief of Innovation at a Canadian digital measurement, reporting, and verification company called ESG One, and that's also a title I share with our founding company, Guild One, where we've been building digital tools for the oil and gas industry for about the last 25 years. At ESG One, we work with partners including energy companies, nature-based solutions, and clean technologies to help them use blockchain to create data verification for different use cases, including environmental product declarations, as well as carbon offsets and emissions accounting. And we really believe that blockchain, both permission and public, is going to be really critical for a successful energy transition. And all of these, really big expectations and hopes that we have for blockchain in the sustainability space can't happen without a lot of education. And this is something that's a big passion of mine. I'm a founding director at our National Blockchain Consortium in Canada, where I lead the development of our industry educational initiatives. And I'm really excited to get to share that we're going to be partnering with the Cardano Foundation to bring their great educational tools to our community in Canada. So great to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
That's very exciting. Thank you for sharing. So before we get into where we are today and where we want to go, I think it's important that we build a picture of the past so we understand how we have gotten to where we are now. So if I could ask you all to just give us an overview of your industry as it was. If you could discuss perhaps some of the legacy technologies or applications, solutions, or lack thereof, and anything else you think is relevant to help the audience understand your industry's past and how it has become where it is here today. And I think we'll start again in this order, and then I'll mix things up as we get into this. So Captain Mohammed, please, if you could again start us off.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, the way we examine firearms, as an example, is we look at two bullets. One came from a crime scene, and one we test fired. And if it had the same ballistics fingerprint, then it came from the same source. However, it's time-consuming, believe me, when you need to actually go through lots of bullets and lots of cartridge cases from past crimes or past registered firearms. And the way we do it is we have an automated ballistics identification system. So what it does is scan its ballistics fingerprint and searches its database and allows us to narrow down that search to the top 20 most likely hits. And then we need to sit down and manually confirm afterwards. However, it's always an issue when crimes go international. What I mean by that is usually firearms are sometimes smuggled from one region to another, or one country to another, or even same states, one state to another. And it's a pain when you have different systems not being able to talk to each other, or does not have the same standard. So since more than almost 30 years, this has been the practice, and this still is till today. Although there has been some standardizations with regards to file formats, but there is a lot of work that needs to still be done.
Very cool. If you could please tell us a little bit about the past of your industry, please, Jean-Louis.
So it depends on which part of the past and which part of my business we go into. The front and foremost that we tend to think of is agriculture, which is in reality, the oldest profession. And I think that sometime I say we need to remember the keywords in agriculture are seed, grow, and harvest. So these are the first entrepreneurs. And before, their domain was very close to them. Food was sold at a local level, food was bought at a local level. But now, we not only wish to have things which need to come from afar. The coffee and cocoa was always there, they came from afar, and that was like the drugs. But our normal food now, if we think about it, even the wheat that goes into our bread may not be grown locally next to us, which means that the power shift has happened with the farmers. And at the end of the day, and also it's really a financial, which is where I come from. So I have 30 years in corporate finance and corporate treasury. So really understanding this whole idea of how do you move things, the trade aspect of it, the cash aspect. And this is where blockchain technology comes in very well. And in our immediate future, we've been able to show that track and trace can be done with blockchain. Now we need to understand what are the financial needs to really create liquidity behind more than selling a token for liquidity. But what is the cash that is coming in? How it is distributed? And who is participating in the ecosystem? And this is where, for me, the Cardano opportunity is really great. As Alexis said, it's this marrying of a permission chain and also private chain. Because you need to be able to, when you're tokenizing or you have an asset, make it available and have a pricing, so it allows for price discovery, understanding what has happened, and all those data aspects then create the value. And this is, to me, where I see the future. And it's beyond agriculture, but at the end, agriculture is the most important thing, because if you don't eat, you die.
That's a very good point. Yes, absolutely. So even now, within the first 2 points being raised about the past of the industry, we can already see, whether it's firearms or it's wheat, that there is a necessity for traceability and also interoperability within that supply chain. I think, again, this speaks to the relevance of traceability solutions being blockchain-based. But let's move on, please, Barang.
Yeah, so to add to what Captain Mohammed just mentioned, the systems are outdated. And with today's technology, there's far more that we can reach. But what we faced in countless meetings with law enforcement organizations, I think the main issue is education. So explaining in detail what value could be added to the existing system, whether it is just to the trust layer, to the sensitivity of the data, or enhancing a process. Yeah, basically that's the main issue we face. But it slowly, with the results like traceability solutions done by Cardano, I think we have something to prove and something to show. It's not just mere discussions without any solid proof or evidence, right? So once you can bring solutions to the table, practically, then it is easier to educate and convince. That's the main issue we face today.
I understand. And last again, but not least, Alexis, please, can you fill us in on your industry?
Sure. Well, the legacy state for traceability in the oil and gas industry is really based around a lot of manual data processing and verification. very siloed data systems within companies and a lot of obstacles to sharing data in between collaborators like project partners. And this state creates a lot of challenges for traceability that lead to some pretty big operational risks in the industry. And I'll give a couple of examples. The first one that I would point to is business friction and disputes between partners. And this is a massive challenge in the oil and gas industry. In some cases, up to 80% of a company's G&A budget can go towards the manual data reconciliation and verification and auditing, and in the worst case scenario, legal bills that happen when two partners in a project have data that disagrees because they don't share the same systems, processes, and in a lot of cases, they don't even share the same nomenclature for different terms, including things as basic as what is a well site. So that's a major challenge because the oil and gas industry is very heavily dependent on partnerships and on good business relationships. And the lack of traceability of the data that goes into calculating things that are prone to disputes, like royalties, is a pretty big problem in the sector. The other thing that I would point to are risks throughout supply chains that come from a lack of data visibility. The oil and gas industry has a massive black market based on stolen product that's actually about $130 billion every year, which is, the equivalent of the GDP of a mid-sized country. So this is a huge challenge. This includes product that's been adulterated, as well as fuel products that have been stolen, often from conflict regions. So traceability will go a long way towards resolving this black market, as well as ensuring that companies can maintain integrity throughout their supply chains.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Before we move past the past, is there anything else anybody would like to mention?
Yes, what my colleagues here mentioned is something very, very essential when it comes to law enforcement. Trust and transparency. And this is very true when it comes to the application of firearms trafficking, especially when it comes to across borders. At the moment, we see various databases, and those form of information, law enforcement like to call it intelligence for some reason, to just make it look cool. But some law enforcement agencies want to be the centralized entity that owns that data and shares whatever they want, but not ideally shedding light on what is actually there. So I believe, as my colleagues just mentioned, it's trafficking or tracking firearms is one of the applications that blockchain may be very valuable in, especially when it comes to a more international perspective where transparency is literally the key to achieving that success.
Does anyone else like to add anything? Please.
I actually would like to add something, Mohammed. I've been actually advocating for, instead of calling transparency, let's call it translucency. So that way you put in the governance of that transparency. So these other governments, they have that data, and they have somewhat of control of that data. And we know that data is there for the taking when it's needed. So it's a form of that veil, and we open it when we need. And I think one of the key challenge I have is people wanting to play or not wanting to play because they think their data is going to be taken away from them. But this is about showing them that if you start sharing, you also get back. So sharing is caring.
And before we move on, anybody else would like to make any statements? Fantastic. Okay, so let's move now into the present. So your industry as it is today. Can we look at the current state of the art? Can we talk about any existing traceability solutions that now exist as a result of the past? And if you'd like to identify any of the specifics related to blockchain, you're more than welcome to do so. If not, we can approach that in the future concept or later on in this section. I'm going to change things up now so we don't get stuck into a routine. Brian, would you like to start, please?
Yeah, sure. So to give you an example, for example, the evidence management system, right? So you might imagine how sensitive it might be And obviously, the inherent characteristics of blockchain, such as decentralization, accountability, transparency, immutability, will really add value when it comes from finding a piece of evidence at the crime scene up to the court. So these features would definitely enrich the entire process and make sure that a fair decision is made. I believe everybody might assume there might be a lot of cases where this today's legacy system leads to maybe biased decision making or incorrect decision making. And I think the features we just mentioned would really add value to this. This applies not only to evidence management, this would be case management, traceability of firearms, as Mohammed mentioned, digital forensics and the accuracy of data, right? Storage and in traffic incidences, for example, right? In recording of surveillance cameras, body cameras for police officers. These features could really add value that is today not the case.
Absolutely. Can I drill down a little bit further with you? So you've mentioned these characteristics that are common in many of these blockchain technologies that exist today. But if I can put you on the spot a bit, why Cardano blockchain versus any other?
Yeah, so my personal view on that is the peer-reviewed scientific approach of Cardano, plus the fact of, I would say, what the other day the CEO mentioned, 2,000 days without downtime. Stability, in a nutshell, stability. And law enforcement, forensics, sensitive data would never consider any other option or could not risk it to sacrifice data of the public unless it is 100% safe and secure. And that's where Cardano comes in.
Thank you very much. Alexis, can we move on to you? So current state of the art in your industry and perhaps anything blockchain-based that you'd like to share with regards to traceability solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the oil and gas industry for about the last decade has been undergoing a really rapid digitalization, and a lot of that is focused on access to data. So, for example, right now, a large-size oil and gas facility might have 80,000 to 100,000 sensors, all capturing terabytes of data every day. So big data has seen a lot of adoption in terms of providing traceability and insight into different production and supply chain processes. The big challenge there is ensuring that that data is useful and also that that data is trusted. So for things like production data, which is used to calculate royalty payments and settlements, we've worked on smart contract solutions that allow oil and gas companies to share the same set of trusted facts about production and leverage all that data that's being captured, but not run into the frequent disputes that have characterized the legacy state. And these are projects that we worked on with a blockchain consortium called Blockchain for Energy, which is based in Houston. Another area where the oil and gas industry is really starting to embrace blockchain for traceability is around emissions management. So in the energy industry, there's something called environmental product declarations. And this is a full supply chain or scope 3 analysis of the emissions intensity or carbon impact of a particular fuel product. And this can include sometimes 100, 150 different data points that all have an emissions factor that represents the expected carbon contribution to that fuel product. So you can imagine all of the challenges in collecting and verifying and turning that data into a singular certificate that can reflect the true impact of that fuel product. And this is becoming increasingly important because a lot of these calculations coming out of the oil and gas industry are being used by all industries when they're looking at the scope 3 impact of their supply chains and their products. So it's absolutely necessary that this data is trusted and verified and accessible. And blockchain is a fantastic tool for that. Another application, of course, is carbon credits and managing all of the measurement data as carbon's being sequestered or carbon is being removed from different processes in the oil and gas industry. And this was actually our first Cardano use case. We partnered with a Canadian energy company called Tidewater Midstream. And we used Cardano together with an artificial intelligence partner to generate tokens that reflected verified volumes of carbon as it was being sequestered underground at one of their facilities. And that was really exciting. And I think that's where there's a tremendous amount of benefit for the public token state when you need a lot of data transparency. And you also need to be able to easily share that information in, kind of this discrete, immutable package. As it flows across supply chains and as other industries and other companies then use that information to be able to understand their environmental impact.
Thank you very much, Alexis. Captain Mohammed, the current state of the art of your industry and perhaps some of these aspects about data sharing that seem to be common across all of these various use cases.
You can imagine how sensitive information is when it comes to firearms. And just to give you an idea of it, sometimes because the data is centralized, whether it is on a national or a local level, sometimes firearms examiners or data or personnel who own those data are either blackmailed or bribed to delete those files just for criminals to get away with it. So having secure copies that are shared amongst different nodes is the best way to go about it, especially when it comes to international cooperation. When it comes to, and we heard this earlier today, when it comes to policies and governance with entities such as Interpol or the UN, this voting down to up approach is maybe most suitable, not just up to down. And as they mentioned, it is always a trial and error where you find a certain thin line to go ahead with that solution. Talking about automated ballistics identification systems as well. At the moment, internationally speaking, it's a specific product that owns that data. And if for whatever political reason that entity or that country is forced not to share that data or delete that data, then everyone is twisted by their hand and forced not to have any data. And when it comes to international cooperation, bylaws actually are in place to have equality amongst everyone and translucence. I believe strongly that blockchain is a tool that will definitely speed up the process of reaching there. Similarly with environment or climate change, it may be not the specific tool that will solve everything, but it will definitely be a tool that will help accelerate everything towards the goal needed.
So Geneviève, picking up on that concept, not only within the current state of the art of your industry, perhaps we can touch upon some of these identity specifics as well and how they relate to your current industry.
The challenge of it's all of our industry because food is really related to all of us. Pandemic showed us the panics that goes through when borders are closed or throughways are closed or people cannot get to the farms. And in ways, there's that one aspect of it, and who is touching our food. And the food fraud is, I think it's like $10 trillion, if not more, in things of how it's going in. But what we don't think about clearly still is how food could actually be used as a form of cybersecurity. Because if you can actually bring it tainted and spread it, you could actually make people sick and create those things. So that's one aspect of it. So identifying where it's coming from, who's touched it, how long did it take to get where it was? So which means, was there time to do something which is either a loss or a gain of other things? So these aspects of identifying people who, and also identifying entities is very key. We have a lot of system or, in the greater north that's available, but in the greater south, they haven't spent the time. So there is an opportunity through blockchain technology to start giving that digital identity, but which has those different attributes that you can bring in. Because what people don't realize is that, I actually sometimes say, blockchain to me is identity management on speed. And because you now can have various tokenization, because in reality we keep talking, the problem with when we talk of token, we imagine this thing that you can trade, versus a token is really a digital visualization of something or many things, which then gives you that ability to see it across, which means identify where things came from, the components came from, and bring that in. And in terms, of really what that enrichment does, if we think about it, we don't have many food derivatives, but we have a lot of commodities. But the food commodity is actually one of the most important one, and a very big example of what can happen when there isn't a clear understanding of how much is being produced and what the effect would be was in July, India decided we're no longer going to export the rice. If you don't have it on the ship, it's not going. So that created trade issues because people who had a trade agreement, they couldn't do anything. The government said no. That's one level. They were hoping that that was going to make the price of rice go down in India. It didn't. What it did is that it created a 300% to 400% increase across the world in rice, and then it went into wheat and corn going up because rice was used as the filler for animal feed. You no longer had the rice, so they started using the wheat and the corn, and then guess what? Ethanol went up. This corn is used for ethanol. So all those things, if you start having the identity of where things are being grown, where are they going to be available, you can then start understanding what is going to be the effect either geopolitically or even locally. And this is where I think blockchain really becomes important, not just for the person producing, but also governments in being able to enact better policies.
Absolutely, I can't agree more. In fact, this is an area that's very close to the work I do at the Cardano Foundation. For those that don't know, I'm the team lead of decentralized trust and identity solutions, and I think this speaks to the transparency and also the necessity for having identity involved in all of these traceability solutions. But what that identity looks like, I think, needs to be scoped further in the future to make sure we have interoperability. But those are some fantastic points. Thank you very much for sharing. Is there anything else we want to mention?
Thomas,
please.
Earlier you asked me why Cardano.
Yes.
So
I sense a question is coming my way.
Would be great if you could tell us why Cardano, and we hear this a lot. How would we convince a decision maker why Cardano?
Well, it's not an easy question, but I think I have a fairly straightforward answer. Barang, you mentioned the characteristics of blockchain that we're all familiar with. But I think when we speak about the specifics of Cardano, some would say we've been accused of being perhaps slow in our process, but I'd like to take us back to a very common narrative or saying that slow and steady wins the race. And I think we've seen in a number of different ecosystems perhaps a desire to progress faster than should possibly be the case, and unfortunately we've seen in some ecosystems that have a negative impact. So from my perspective, I would say we're using those research principles that you mentioned, but again, slow and steady wins the race. That's my opinion anyhow.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to make any further comments?
Yeah, I would just add to that about Cardano. That was one of the really key reasons why it was our public blockchain of choice for our sustainability applications, the reliability, the academic rigor, and the fact that the development of Cardano has been approached in a lot of ways more more like some of the enterprise chains that we do a lot of work with. But I would also add to that that we found a lot of values alignment with Cardano, with the foundation. Working in the sustainability space, we really appreciated that that was a priority for the foundation, and it was something that just really resonated to us. And we're very grateful that we came across you.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Captain Mohammed?
I'm sure you're aware also that our application when it comes to scanning ballistics fingerprints, whether it is from bullets or cartridge cases, is size intensive. And I believe the only blockchain technology that I personally came across that can actually store that data and use its technology to compute our solutions effectively is Cardano. Yeah.
And you're referring to the metadata, I suppose, as well within the transactions. That's an excellent point. Thank you for sharing that. I probably should have mentioned that when Barang asked me, so thank you, Captain Mohammed. You saved me there. Much appreciated. I'm conscious of the time. We have just under 4 minutes. Let's move on to the future, because I think that's where we need to focus now. In your opinion, with all of your respective industries, what are the innovations or the solutions that are necessary to further enhance traceability, transparency, and is there a role perhaps from government or regulatory bodies or anybody else within your supply chain, or Geneviève, as you say, your value chain? What do we need? What do we need to get to the future, and what does that future look like? Geneviève, please, if you could lead us.
One of the things I told Alexis is we need more tunnels.
Tunnels.
No more bridges. I'm a New Yorker, so bridges and tunnels are two things we're very aware of. And I think that what I'm very excited in terms of the future is how we at AgriLedger can work with an organization such as Cardano, because you're coming in with something which is very key for me, which is identity, but also preserving of privacy. So being able to do those two things and understanding the fundamental difference around what needs to be in the public realm and what needs to be in the private realm. And I explained to some people before, it's like getting married. You go and you register the marriage, but your marriage happens behind the door of your house. And there's no need to go into your house unless there's a problem in the house. And then the authorities can come in and inspect. So that's what we need to be able to have to preserve sanctity, which then allows people to trust that the system will not divulge the information. Because at the end of the day, we have to remember what we are doing is creating wealth. The idea is to create equity in wealth or create information, which is also itself wealth. And you need to preserve that in order to allow people to think, yeah, I'm okay with putting it in there because I know it will only be seen when it's necessary.
Barang, within your industry?
I think on top of education earlier mentioned, real life use cases where people can see it resolves a problem.
Yes.
In action, practical, not theory.
Yes.
Like the traceability solution we mentioned, like what Mohammed mentioned and the colleagues mentioned. So things that people can really associate to, see the result, and that makes their day-to-day legacy practices easier, where we see the value. Theory alone will not take us far.
Excellent. Alexis, please.
Thank you. The future of traceability in the oil and gas industry is full automation. It's the only way that we're going to be able to scale to meet the reporting as well as the verification requirements of the oil and gas industry and all supply chains, really. And this is increasingly being done through the convergence of IoT and digital twins, AI, and smart contracts and tokenization. And I think what we're going to start seeing emerging in the next few years are independent, autonomous economies of things where device networks and digital twins are able to generate and transact data without the need for human oversight. And I think that this is going to be really the key to realizing the goals of the energy transition, especially when it comes to how we account for our data, our carbon data, and how we apply emissions offsets.
Fantastic. Captain Mohammed, please.
I would like to share just 3 main points. First one is being the blockchain technology being introduced and integrated more towards the criminal justice system as a whole. Some applications of that are forensics labs sending their formal reports to courts. However, sometimes there is no method of checking its authenticity because it has the possibility of it not being secured. Second of all, I would like to acknowledge Jeremy for his idea the other day, is creating actually new avenues for retired examiners, where if you have a source of data of acquired ballistics fingerprints, you need to actually have someone supervise the information. However, sometimes, depending on the workload of that entity, some mistakes may seep through the cracks. Whereas if you have minors or retired examiners doing that as an incentivized method, that is something to think about. Last but not least is, at the moment, because there are specific products that are being used internationally, that source of data is centralized. However, introducing blockchain or integrating blockchain in a more holistic international approach is definitely a very interesting method, especially when it comes to voting. And I really like, this is my first Cardano summit, and something that I heard here earlier is we have real people because what we do here is real. And especially when you have real applications, whether it is in firearm, oil and gas, agriculture, and others, these are significant applications, and you need a technology to help you monitor the process, because if you cannot monitor, you cannot improve.
Fantastic points. Thank you. We are now way beyond time, and I think this speaks again to the necessity to further have these conversations. From my perspective, one of the challenges we have at the Cardano Foundation is how we can demonstrate that a public, permissionless blockchain can still be utilized for these privacy-preserving use cases. But with that in mind, and with the fact that I believe I will probably be dragged off the stage soon by David if I don't wrap up, I'd like to say thank you all very much. Much appreciated from my side. An absolute honor to be on stage here with you. And I look very much forward to the future and where Cardano blockchain can take traceability, transparency, and provenance to the future. Thank you all very much, and thank you all for attending. Thank you.